fast. I'm gonna wait a few moments for people to hop on. Welcome everyone. I hope some people were able to sleep in this morning. I slept in a little bit. So I'm here today to talk to you guys about why representation matters after attending the NABJ and NAHJ 2020 virtual conference. And NABJ is the National Association for Black Journalists. And this year they combined with the National Association for Hispanic Journalists for a virtual conference. Hi, Colleen. Glad you're here with us today. Oh my gosh. So one of the people who are watching had to wake up for 5 a.m. That's so unfortunate, but I'm glad you're here with us today. Okay, so I'll get started and people who hop along will come. So before I dive into the 2020 conference this year, I just wanted to follow up on my live. I don't know if you guys tuned in the last time, but in the beginning of the video, I mentioned that I took a COVID test at the CVS up the street, and I finally got my results back last night. And thankfully, I tested negative, so all is well in that area. And so I'm finally able to reunite with my housemates and give them hugs and everything like that. So I'm very grateful that I got those results. Had to wait, 10 days, but I did get them. Hi, Mark. Great for you to join us. Okay, but something that kept me occupied this week while I was waiting for those results to come in was the NABJ NAHJ 2020 virtual conference. And again, for those who are just hopping on, NABJ is the National Association for Black Journalists. I'm a student member for that organization. And this year they did a joint conference with the National Association for Hispanic Journalists. And they turned into a virtual format for obvious reasons with COVID and everything. And I was really looking forward to this year's conference to be in person because it was going to be in DC. And I happen to live in DC this year, so I would have just been able to hop on the metro and pull up to the conference hotel and have my business cards ready and dressed in my gear and ready to network. But they were actually able to pivot and make this conference virtual, and I think they did a great job for it being first time. Hey, Pablo. Hey, Amber. Okay, so like I said, I would have, gone to DC and did the conference, but this year that didn't happen because it's a virtual format. So, like I said, the leaders and planners, they pivoted, they were able to transition this conference virtually, and I'm going to highlight how they did that. Hi, Amber. Yes, I love the DMV area too. So even though the virtual format was obviously different, it wasn't in person, I still enjoyed it. And so I took some screenshots that I'm going to show you guys that kind of show the general layout of the land. So I'm going to pull that up and then show it on my computer. Okay, so I'm going to flip the camera. Okay, so I'm going to turn this sideways so you can see it widescreen. And this is the general layout of the land. So it looks like a hotel, basically hotel lobby, and they have different pinpoints that I want to highlight. So info desk, wherever questions you have, and then these are the sponsors the companies that sponsored the convention this year. And then over to the left, you have career fair, Saturday events, and then in the middle right there, workshops and sessions. And then to the right, if you can't see it, it's special events and networking, and that's sponsored a virtual photo booth. So this is kind of a cool layout, and so you're able to click around. So for example, if you go to the career fair, you click on that, it brings you to another screenshot. So I'll show you that in a minute. Pulling that screenshot out now. So this is the career fair. It brings you to another room. And then again, you have the sponsors, some of the recruiters that were featured. And then if you look on the little escalator right there, it says career fair. So we're going to go into the career fair. And I really liked this feature. So this is what comes up. And I didn't take a screenshot of the whole thing because I just wanted you to focus in on this. So this is actually a scrolling feature. Obviously, I can't scroll because this is a screenshot. And so you're able to scroll from left to right with showing the list of recruiters. And it's cool because each of these recruiters have their own booths. And so you're able to see which recruiter is what. And so, like I said, you can scroll from left to right, and NABJ and NAHJ had over 100 recruiters present this year. And one of the features that I really liked about the career fair is they had under what you saw the booths, they had an index of each recruiter that was present, and you were able to schedule appointments with them. And each recruiter had basically a sponsor like representing them, and you're able to create an appointment with them to speak one-on-one with them. And they recommended that you do that before the conference because obviously there's a lot of people attending virtually, and so you want to be able to schedule those appointments and make sure you have that one-on-one time with that recruiter if you're looking for a job, if you're looking to start your first job or transition to your next job. That was able that was something that we're able to take advantage of. So I thought that was really cool. So I was able to set up like 3 or 4 appointments with recruiters and talk to them one-on-one based on the chat. Okay, flipping phone makes it difficult to view. Okay, so I'll keep it vertical. Thank you. And so I'll show you, so back in the lobby, and I'm going to show the layout for the career, the sessions and the workshops. Turn this back around. So you click on sessions and workshops and it brings you here. And then you click here and it brings you to the list of all of the sessions and workshops that were present throughout the week. So this was Wednesday through Friday, and that's the typical days of the week that the conference is held on. So each day they featured a list of sessions at different times, and that was the fact for the 3 days that this event spanned. And then I'll go to this one. But yeah, so some of the sessions that I'm going to flip this around, but that was basically the layout of the land. And what was cool about the workshops is they featured a range of topics. And some of the ones that I attended was workshops on freelancing. There were 2 workshops on freelancing, and I found that very useful because I'm a freelancer right now. With grad school, we had to get a certain number of clips published for our program. And so I was encouraged to connect with editors in the area to get my work published. And so that's how I started freelancing last September. And my freelance experience has grown and evolved, and I've been able to connect with editors from different publications. And so I was able to learn in these workshops, like, how do finances work? When it comes to taxes, you file as an LLC, a sole proprietor, because you're essentially an independent journalist. You're on your own. You're not tied to one organization, so you don't receive any of their benefits. And so that was something that I found really useful. And I think this is one of like the first years that they've offered like really in-depth sessions about freelancing. And then another one was ongoing fight for pay equity for journalists of color. Another session that I found really interesting was prioritizing mental health care, prioritizing mental health and self-care. Several of the NAHJ members led this workshop. Journalists are covering and have been covering some of very heavy topics for these past few months, and that constant reporting about these topics can be very traumatic and put strains on us physically, mentally, spiritually, etc. And one of the panelists said, we don't have to kill ourselves to do our jobs well. And I believe that 100%. Burnout is a real thing. And another panelist said, I'm almost at my limit and I don't want to get there. So just prioritizing mental health, especially right now. And then another topic was about insights into the criminal justice system. mass incarceration of people of color, and the lack of coverage that newsrooms are reporting. And Lester Holt actually led that panel, and he's done lots of coverage over the years about the criminal justice system, and even how he spent several nights in Louisiana Penitentiary and Gola, and what that experience was like. So that was pretty cool to look into. Highlighted how mass incarceration of Blacks is modern day slavery. But I think one of my favorite sessions from the event in general was when racism and objectivity collide. What does objectivity really mean? And this was an honest and open conversation with news directors and company leaders in the industry. And this is something that I've personally been struggling with. Why some newsrooms, allow reporters to use hashtag pride, but not Black Lives Matter, and just the complexities of these various movements across the country where, you're a journalist, but you're supposed to protect, objectivity and neutrality. But that becomes difficult when something affects you in your life personally. I could talk about this topic all day long, but I think this is a good transition to why NABJ and these organizations are so important and why representation matters in general, especially in the newsroom and for various media outlets. So this is my fourth NABJ conference, and I've been a student member since my sophomore year of undergrad. And my first NABJ conference was in my hometown of New Orleans, and that happened in 2017. And my dad was the one who actually encouraged me to get involved. He has a journalism background and communications background. And my first conference was very emotional for me. I went to a predominantly white institution for undergrad, and I was one of the very few Black people in my major. And so for me to go to that conference and see all of these Black people in the industry I wanted to, work in, that was, these are people that were killing it in the field and like doing the darn thing. That was so inspiring for me and impacted me so much. And I was just super overwhelmed. There are a lot of us spread out across this industry, across the country, but oftentimes we're hidden under the radar. And this annual conference is really a family reunion for us to reconnect, to network, to meet each other, catch up, and just vent about the joys, the hardships, et cetera, of being Black in a white dominated field. And so the past two conferences, Detroit in 2018 and then Miami in 2019, I participated as a student member in the student media multimedia projects. And this is something where NABJ students can apply, and they are selected. Many people apply, but only a few are selected. And each year at the conference, they dedicate wherever hotel they are. They dedicate like a room in the hotel to be a newsroom. And so the student projects people, we literally report everything going on in the conference. Like we are divided into teams, broadcast, PR, photography, etc. And we report on what's happening at the conference, but also we report in the area that we're in. So for example, Detroit in 2018, I was on the broadcast team. And because Canada was so close, I was able to report and do a package from Windsor, Canada. So I thought that was really cool. But like we have mentors for student projects, and these are people who have been in the field, they know the runarounds, they know everything. And they are super honest and transparent about what it is to be Black in the field. So, for example, for TV news, so for people who are TV anchors or on camera reporters, they have to be vigilant about what they wear on screen and basically how they appear on screen. Because if they have a little more melanin than me, if they're a little more darker than me, they encourage them to wear like certain colored dresses, certain like dark green and like bright yellow to complement their skin because of how the lights in the studio hit their skin. So that's something we have to worry about. Another thing is our hair. There's been a lot of hair discrimination in the TV news industry and just the industry in general. So, for example, my hair is straight right now. And I just did it because it's easier to maintain because my hair is super thick and in its natural state is super curly. So it's harder to work with. So because our hair is so versatile, we experience a lot of discrimination. And so a lot of people who go to these conferences, they're wearing braids as a protective hairstyle to protect their natural hair. So there's so many things that we can do to our hair, but we can't really express ourselves because of this discrimination and because of like the misconceptions about Black hair. Let's see, I'm gonna read the comments. Do you believe Black Americans are held back as journalists due to their color? Yeah, I'll get into that in a minute. Isn't it true for pale people? Certain colors work better on screen. Yeah, but that's the thing is like certain colors work for certain people, I think. But for particularly Black people, particularly darker skinned people, they really have to pay attention to what they wear. And that's just the fact of the game. Let's see. So when it comes to representation in the industry, I think intersectionality is huge. And that's the word of the year for me. And I think that'll be the word from here on out. Everyone has something to bring to the table. But intersectionality and representation matters because people have various experiences. And who you have on staff matters because that reflects not only the organization or publication you're a part of, but that ultimately reflects the storytelling and the content produced. And so I want to go to this AmericanPressInstitute.org website, and they talk about two key points of why representation matters in the newsroom. So the first, diversity is a business imperative. Concentrated efforts to highlight diversity are necessary for reaching audiences and staying relevant to younger, changing audiences. Readers pay attention to the content that speaks to or serves their identity. And so if you don't have anybody on staff where the content reader, the audiences are reading, they're not really going to be interested in your publication because nothing reflects them. And then the second one, diversity is a journalism imperative. Without accounting for the range of lived experiences, we fail to serve parts of our communities. Journalism, in its truest form, should be produced for the benefit of all, not only those who wield a particular power, class, or authority. Let's see, Amber Young. So true. Representation so important in journalism. Yes, especially. Oh, we have a viewer from Santo Domingo. I'm assuming that's in the DR. I love that place. Okay, so and then I want to just back it up with some facts and some data because data is simply facts. It's objective, it's neutral. Um, so this is from a 2019 diversity study from the News Leaders Association. And so journalists of color, and I can send this link in my profile after this. Journalists of color make up nearly a third of the full-time workforce among online-only news organizations. And then I'm going to scroll down. Among online-only newsrooms, women make up 50% of salaried workers, a figure that is unchanged from the 2018 data survey. Women make up 41% of all newsroom workers. Overall, people of color represent 21.9% of the salaried workforce among newsrooms that responded to this year's Newsroom Employment Diversity Survey. Nearly 200 journalists who identified as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender completed an additional self-administered survey that was offered this year. According to the survey, 78% identified as white, while 7.5% identified as African American or Black. Another 7.5% identified as biracial or multiracial, and nearly 3% identified as Asian. Overall, people of color make up only 18.8% of newsroom managers, and that's important to note. Managers, the ones who are in leadership positions at both print and digital and online only publications. 40% of management roles are filled by women among organizations that participated in the 2019 survey. So, according to this website, the results summarize responses from 429 news organizations, including 267 newspapers and 65 online only news sites. And then they said some organizations did not specify which category they fell into. All right, let me look at some of the comments. Amber Young says, in SoCal, I feel lucky to see diverse journalists on TV for the programs I watch. Someone asked, do I blame the HR department? And I don't know the answer to that because, like I said, I'm a freelancer, so I'm not in the newsroom as of yet. I'm still looking for my first full time job. But I think the HR department whole has to be accountable. And I also believe the news directors should be held accountable because they're ultimately the ones who are bringing people onto their staff. HR, is umbrella. But for TV news, for example, news directors are the big guys. Well, I mean, yes, males do represent the majority of the news directors, but in that position, you have a certain obligation to basically carry your staff and reflect that staff. And so ultimately this conference in particular is so important because one of the topics and one of the main topics was we need to lead and advocate for more diversity in the newsroom. We are a people, we're people of color. We bring various experiences to the table. We have certain backgrounds, and depending on where we're located, our community needs to see us. Because when I was little, I had very few Black reporters, especially on TV, who looks like me. And one of them was Nancy Parker from WVUE Fox 8 News in New Orleans. And she unfortunately passed away almost 2 years ago in a plane crash. And she was ultimately the one who got me my first internship at a news station in New Orleans. And so for her to be on air for a long time, like that was just so inspirational to me. And I wanted to be like her when I grew up. And now that I'm here in this industry, I see all of the discrimination, all of the inequity that we experience, and that needs to change. Okay, I'm going back to my notes. But ultimately, I just wanted to highlight some facts about diversity in the newsroom and why representation in the newsroom is so important. Okay, Colleen says, if you're looking for a job, do you think you'll be wanted if you are, let's see, I think it was a typo. Okay, I'm gonna have to reread that later. But so the problem with diversity is there's a certain like quota that people have to fill. Um, and my issue is, are you looking to hire me because I'm Black, or are you looking for more intersectionalities? Like, I'm Black, I came from this, these are my backgrounds, these are my skills, and I would like to have more transparent conversations with publications, or I hope more publications will have more transparency about that, about their hiring process, because journalism is a hard industry, and a lot of people don't know what happens behind closed doors, especially with TV reporters. They don't just look pretty for the camera. They have to do interviews and all of these things. And so we need to hire people who look like the people who we serve. And so, let's see. And that's the thing with like, I don't work in TV news, and so a lot of them do hire based on talent, but then it has to be an extension. Okay, they have talent, but yes, this is their background, this is what they can bring to this organization. And so I just think we have to change the mindset, and that goes for everybody: online publications, TV news, and just beginning to have conversations about diversity in the newsroom among the people on your staff, not just reporting about and producing content, but actually having training sessions in newsrooms. And these can be led by HR, these can be led by the news directors, these can be led by editors, just to be comfortable with talking about race, talking about the issues going on in the world right now. And I think that we'll be able to progress to a more diverse newsroom setting and industry. Um, but yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments about representation in newsroom and like the publications that you read. What audience do they cater to? Do they cater to a majority white audience? Do they cater to a majority Black audience? Do they cater to a mixed population of demographics? And I think that's very important is people develop a sense of media criticism, really looking at what you read on Facebook. What are their sources? What perspectives do they present to the table? And so I really think that's important because as an industry, yes, we make a commitment to storytelling. We make a commitment to showing the whole story, fairness and balance. But some publications have different goals. Some publications have different niches of audiences. And so that's something to pay attention to going forward. So yeah, someone said couldn't tell you. I don't focus on that. And just like being aware of how we read our content and how we engage in content. And that goes for who we follow on social media. So I challenge everybody who's watching this is to really pay attention. Like if you follow majority white people, maybe that frames a certain perspective. Maybe that frames a certain viewpoint. And maybe that's one viewpoint. And so I encourage people to follow people outside of who they talk to, outside of their circles, to engage in more viewpoints and to engage in more conversations about what's happening in our world. And I'm proud of myself because I pride myself on having multiracial friendships because they open up my mind and they open up my perspectives. And we're able to talk about really challenging topics, but do it on a civil, basic level and just lay out everything on the table. And I think that's a pure sign of growth. So if we're able to really expand our viewpoints, I think we'll be able to progress as a society, and especially in journalism. So with that being said, that's all I have for you guys. And I really appreciate you for being on today. I'll